ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of El Local. I am your host, Eddie Gonzalez, and today we have Maria Orozco joining us today. Good morning, Maria.
Good morning, Eddie.
How are you doing?
Doing good.
Yeah?
Yeah,
So this is your first podcast that you've ever done.
correct.
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. Not bad.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of people that I've brought on, it's like the first time they're in front of a camera or talking on a mic. So it can be a little intimidating. So I'm very happy that you're here joining us. So the more I kind of get people on, the more people I want to help. I'm hoping people are like, oh, I can do that too, you know? So thank you. And so, Maria, you are currently the city of Watsonville mayor. For those who don't know and those that do know, the mayor role rotates,
Correct.
right, every year.
Yes.
So everyone on the city council gets a turn, right?
Correct.
If they line up in its their year. You also were on the school board a few years back, PVUC school board. So you're pretty much in the limelight of government and politics. And so there's so many questions I have, but I do want to touch base with you as far as getting to know who Maria is
Okay.
and your upbringing. So born and raised in Watsonville.
Not born, raised.
Raised. Okay. So let's dive into that. Where were you born?
I was born in Irapuato, Mexico. So it's Guanajuato. And my father brought us to the States when I was at the age of 5. I celebrated my 6th birthday here in Watsonville. And since then, we've known this as our home.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I'm not born, but raised.
Raised. Yeah, that's awesome. And do you remember that transition moving?
Yeah, I think it was a tough one for me, especially in school. So I didn't speak the language. So that was a huge shock for me.
Yeah.
Thankfully, back then there was a huge push for bilingual programs, and so the teachers at that time sort of made me feel at home in that way.
Yeah.
Sort of trying to create a welcoming environment. But that doesn't mean I didn't struggle, right? I remember, because they alternated days from what I recall. One day was Spanish and the next day was English. And I remember the days in which it was primarily English. I just wanted to go home.
Yeah.
They wanted me to be able to express or report out on an activity, and I did not have the language to do that.
Yeah.
So those are really vivid moments that I carry with me because I understand how important it is for us to be able to have the opportunity to share our story, especially with those whose upbringing may be very similar or who are going through that process themselves.
Yeah.
So that I do remember, it was very rough.
When you moved here, did they just your parents throw you right into school right away, or was there like a grace period where like you kind of guys explored? Was it just like, oh, we're here, we're moving, you're in school like the next day or two?
Thankfully, it was over the summer.
Okay.
Okay. But my father, I think, did a pretty good job of kind of introducing the family to his friends. And from there, I built some relationships with their kids. And so that was nice to have. But I did attend summer school. So that was my first exposure to what school could potentially look like. But it wasn't as intense.
Yeah.
But I was so happy that, I got sort of that mini grace period where I got exposure to the language and just how school worked here.
And so with that, the struggle of kind of adapting and what helped you just acclimate to the new environment and all the changes?
I think having a very strong support system at home helped. Um, and having a very strong mother figure helped a lot. Um, so I remember my mom never missed any award ceremony ever.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
You're right. She would walk me to school. She made sure that, I had a good breakfast. She made sure that I was feeling connected, and she had no issues building connections with other parents.
Mm-hmm.
So those parents and their kids sort of looked out for me as well. So I think that helped the process for me a lot.
That's awesome.
The other thing is my father always said, right? We might not be able to provide you with all the materialistic things, but one of the things that we're going to support you all the way is your education.
Mm-hmm.
So that was always in the back of my head, right? There's you're going to be successful because you're going to be successful.
Yeah.
And success, can be defined in so many different ways.
Yeah.
But for me, that was always sort of ingrained in me.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. And you the only child, or do you have siblings, or?
I had siblings. So I'm the baby of the family.
Oh, okay.
So I have 4 siblings, 2 older brothers and 2 older sisters.
Okay. Did they transition? Was their transition a little bit easier, harder? Because it's almost like they've known, right, Mexico, and then they come back and they come here, and it's like, oh man, I miss my friends. But as a 5-year-old, you don't have as much as the fond memories. So what was that transition for them? Like, what did you see, and how did you learn from your siblings?
I think that my oldest sister, she came in starting 8th grade. So I think, if anything, she probably had the toughest time. But I also learned a lot from her. She kind of served as that initial role model for me, because she also didn't know the language. Yeah. And I know that she struggled a lot, but yet was able to graduate with honors.
Oh, that's awesome.
Right. And as a family, I think my father wanted to open, new opportunities. And so I remember going with my siblings to evening English classes with my father. And my sister, my oldest, she had to go through adult ed to be able to make up the years of English she had missed in order to be able to graduate. So I think just seeing how she was able to go through that process and come out with honors, for me, was well, I sort of don't have any choice. Yeah. I don't have any excuse not to, right?
It's almost like you're gonna learn how to swim by just jumping in there. It's like sink or swim.
Sink and swim. Yeah. And doesn't work for everyone, but I think for us there was no other choice.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, because I know of, and it's nothing against anyone else, because I know families come over and it's very, the change is hard. And for some people in my family, for example, they've been here and they still they're stubborn about learning the language, and they've been here for years. But eventually they're trying, but to come and just the resiliency, to face something head on and take no for an answer, I guess, as you could say, right? Yeah. You got to swim. It's pretty remarkable. And it's great to hear, because it is a motivation, I'm sure, for someone that's going to listen to this or hear this, like you said, talking to people and, learning someone's story. So that's amazing.
Yeah. Thank you.
So you're here, your family's here, you're growing up in the area. What were your fondest memories? You're here, you're 6 years old, you kind of, the 80s, 90s?
90s. Was, I think, 1995. Yeah. And my first year here.
First year here? Okay. So what do you remember from the 90s? What stuck out for you, and what things were just kind of oh, I didn't see this in Mexico, or this was just an eye-opener?
You know what? for Christmas. In Mexico, it was all just about family and convivio, right? Making the tamales, it was a big family ordeal. You had great conversations, and it was a lot more about that. And so, spending my first Christmas here was sort of a shock because everything was about presents. I was like, what do you mean? Like,
Yeah.
what do you mean? You know, you're getting this and this for Christmas. And at the time, I mean, we were pretty low income. So it's not like they could provide us with, you know, so many gifts and so forth. But that was a big shock for me. So it's not the fondest memory. But it's interesting because I feel like two cultures were sort of colliding.
Yeah.
And I was sort of trying to figure out what to make of that. Right. But yeah, so I remember that first Christmas and having to sort of deal with that and being in a new country and living in a new place away from what I considered home and just having to adapt.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was sort of like a beautiful thing because it gave me the opportunity to sort of adapt, but also not forget about all those beautiful traditions that I learned growing up. So it was sort of that opportunity for me to sort of infuse, right, both of worlds. And to date, we continue to do that. We have the big fiesta with the tamales, the tamal making, and sharing of stories with grandparents. But now we have the gifts, right? And
So you're taking the best of both worlds.
the best of both worlds, and that's how my kids are being raised now.
Yeah.
So that was really fun. The other fun memory is just the arts. So I think if something got me through those rough times, it was exposure to music. So whether it was in the classroom, singing along to, you know, De Colores or having mini performances, that sort of made it feel like home as well.
Yeah.
Because back in Mexico, it was all about that too. The different performances, the cultural events, and I was all for that. So that was kind of nice.
What schools did you go to when you got here?
So I started in summer school. It was Alianza, but Alianza was located where Cesar Chavez is now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's where I started summer school. And then I started second grade at Starlight Elementary School. And we stayed there till about my mid fourth grade. And then my father purchased his home. And then I moved to Freedom Elementary, and that's where I finished fourth and fifth grade.
Okay. Nice. At what point did the transition, you finally not made it, but just you finally got it. Like you were comfortable. You had friends. You feel like you adapted to the environment, to Watsonville.
I think it was fourth grade.
Fourth grade.
Yeah, a good year to 2 years in. I think by then I could communicate. I could understand what folks were asking of me. I could read. So it was fourth grade, and I remember just enjoying it so much for that reason. And even echándole más ganas, you know, all the way. Because like, okay, you know, okay, I fit in, you know, I'm okay.
You found your groove.
Yeah. And then so from there, it was just, I became like a little sponge, and I just wanted to learn a lot more and be exposed to different things. And so, so it was around fourth grade.
I got to ask, you went to Freedom. Who were your teachers?
Oh, yeah. So Freedom Elementary School, fourth grade teacher was Mr. Rayburn.
Yes.
I loved him.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, yes.
He was my teacher.
I loved him. And he always had his electric guitar. I still remember one of the songs that I used to love that we would sing. It was called Peacemakers. So that was my fourth grade teacher. And my fifth grade teacher was Mrs. Colbeck.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's I had to ask. So Mr. Raven was your fourth grade teacher.
Yes.
He was my fourth grade teacher.
Were we in the same class?
I don't know because I was there third and fourth for third grade. I had Mr. Hutchpath, and then for fourth grade I had Mr. Raven. So this is
like,
Do you have a yearbook by any chance?
I don't.
Oh, okay. Because a while back, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go look into the yearbooks of my old schools and all that. And I went, and I can't remember. I couldn't find those years, but I remember he would have our names, and then every 10 points,
we
get a little prize.
Treat.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
We were probably in the same.
Might have been in the same. This is mind blowing for me. Okay. Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is so nostalgic and so. And one of my memories that I had with him, he had his desk area, right? It was all a mess.
All the time.
Right, but it was controlled chaos. Like he knew
where everything was.
Yeah. Okay. So there was a moment where I don't know who it was. I can't remember, but there was a few girls that are like, "We're gonna clean his desk," and they cleaned his desk. Everything was nice, and all of a sudden he's like, "Oh, what'd you guys do?" So that was one of my fondest memories. It was the funniest thing. But I remember, just points. Like you would do everything that you could to get those points because you had that prize box.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
All that candy. And it was so fun.
Oh my gosh, we might have actually been in class together.
Do you remember any of the your classmates? I mean, we can think of.
I know there was. Oh my gosh, I think one of my old friends was in there. I can't remember his name. This is gonna bug me for a while, so I'm gonna need to get a yearbook.
Yeah,
so if you could also try to see if you could track down the yearbook, and I'm gonna track down the yearbook. Freedom School. What was it? 1996, 7. I can't remember how old.
97, 98.
Yeah,
around that time.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna have to go and search for him. That is so crazy because as soon as you say Raven, I'm like, oh no, that was my fourth. Because fifth and sixth, I left to Valencia.
Okay.
So because my dad worked on that site, and he wasn't a fan of like middle school being started at sixth grade. So fifth and sixth, I was at Valencia Elementary School. Okay. So, but yeah, fourth grade was my last year there.
Raven.
Yeah, I seen him many years later. Maybe like a few years back, walking, and I was driving by. Still had his ponytail and everything. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that is so cool.
And his cigarette. He was a big smoker.
Yeah. Oh man. I'm gonna look for that yearbook.
We need to. Yeah. Now I'm interested.
Yeah. So after Freedom, where'd you go to high school?
Aptos.
Aptos. Okay. I went to Aptos too.
What year did you start?
I started freshman year, 04, 05, 06, 08. It's a class of 08.
Class of 08. So you were 2 years older than me.
Oh, okay.
I started 2006.
2006. Okay, so then we might have crossed paths then.
Probably.
Yeah. So maybe I was not in the class with Mr. Raven, but
we probably saw each other in high school.
Probably. Okay.
Yeah?
Nice. See? Watsonville is small. The community is small. You just get to know everyone. And so you went to Aptos High. And what were you involved in school? Because you are in government. You are in politics. So what led you to becoming involved?
I think I had a lot of people help me along the way. That was sort of, that was sort of, I don't know if I call it a calling, but it was sort of something that I've always wanted to do.
Were you involved in like ASB?
So in 7th grade, I think I ran my first campaign for school site council. And then my freshman year, I was the secretary for our class. Sophomore year, I think I was vice president. And then junior year, president, I would say. I don't quite recall.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then senior year, I ran for ASB president.
Nice.
Yeah, so yes, student government was always part of my upbringing, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what made you like kind of take that route? Like what sparked that interest? You know, you say you had people that helped you, but like, what was it like? Oh, I want to see if I could do this.
Well, it's because you had to make your own opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
You had to open your own doors, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, being in a new country and feeling like no one sort of kind of understands where you're coming from or your stories or your struggles, sort of kind of influenced my drive to ensure that someone like me sat at the table of making those decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And Aptos High School, at
Yeah.
least for me, and my experience was interesting.
You know, a lot of Latino, Mexican Americans, Chicanos that went there have a story.
Yeah, like from being, in AP classes and honor classes and folks looking at you like, are you even supposed to be here? Like, what do you mean you're taking an AP class, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just felt like a fly in, on the wall.
Yeah.
And so many levels. And so that kind of sort of, again, pushed me to do something about it. And for me, it was very important that someone who was making decisions, even if it was at that level, from the activities that they did, from the rallies that they implement, whatever it may be, that I had a voice,
Yeah.
that people that looked like me had a voice at the table. And so that influenced my decision to run for all those different positions in high school. And even now, right?
Yeah. Did you, at that age, at that time period, did you get a lot of, I guess, backlash? Was there any backlash or was there any like, oh, you can't do it? I mean,
Yes, but I still won.
I love that. I love that. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, but one of the things that at least I appreciated is, I would go out to people and say, oh, can I come with your boat? And some of them were pretty straight up with me. It's like, no, why would I vote for you? But, that could be hurtful, or that could be like, okay, well, I appreciate the fact that you're pretty straight up with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I know where you stand. So I'm not going to, dedicate much of my time asking for your vote again.
You use that as motivation, fuel the fire.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, I got pushback, but I also gained a lot of support, to the point that I was able to represent, our school in different positions throughout high school.
Nice. No, that's awesome. So I should be thanking you for some of the awesome dances and awesome stuff that we had since we were in school together. That's great. And so after school, after high school, you decided to continue your education.
Correct.
Right? Because that what your parents told you, being in the back of your head, I'm going to support you with education 100%. And so I love, because that right there could take anyone over the moon to continue their education. And where did you go? Where did you envision yourself going at that point? And where'd you end up landing?
Yeah. So my goal was law school. I was like, I can, I can debate. I can,
Yeah.
might be a good fit. So I went to Santa Clara University, and I did an emphasis in pre-law, majored in political science and communications. So I did 2 degrees while I was as an undergraduate there.
Awesome.
And then from there, I did apply to law school. I prepared for the LSAT. I took the LSAT, and I think I felt I needed some time off.
Mm-hmm. Was it too much all at
Because
once?
it was, I think, even when I was in my undergraduate years, I was always so involved politically and in leadership. And then I was doing almost 3 majors that by the time that I was done, I was just like, I'm just tired.
You burnt yourself out.
Yeah. You know, and I did it well, but I think for my own sanity, I think I needed to take some time off before I decided to take something else on.
Yeah.
And so I came back. I came back to Watsonville, and I'm so grateful that I did. And I remember I interned with the immigration project because that's where I was leaning towards. And so they sort of opened their doors, and I was there for about 6 months before I started my job at UC Santa Cruz as a financial aid advisor. But I remember the last day of my internship, walking down those stairs, and right across the street, it was around election time. There was a Democratic headquarters, and there was a bunch of campaign signs on the walls and so forth. I was like, oh, what's this, right?
Piqued my interest.
Yes. I was like, I this is interesting. And so I remember just walking in there and just sort of never coming out. And so that's where I got involved with running, different people's campaigns. That's where I met some of my mentors. That's where I met some of the folks that sort of opened those doors to being appointed to a commission, to them being the treasurer for one of our local Democratic clubs. And from there, it just kind
of flourished.
Yeah. And so I'm thankful that I decided to take that year off, that little sabbatical, and not go straight to law school, because I think I got a master's degree in in community service.
Yeah.
In other ways,
Yeah.
Actually doing the work and so forth.
Rolling up your sleeves and getting out there, and because that's the best way you can learn, right? But just doing it. Sometimes you don't know what you're doing, but you're gonna do it, and you're gonna learn that way.
You're gonna learn.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so now, when you ask me, would you consider going back to law school? I would, but I don't see myself inside a courtroom. I see maybe that law degree to sort of kind of inform my decisions, at the local level or state level, and in policy making, but never in a courtroom.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of glad I took that year off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you feel like you get to do more out here than in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really do.
Okay. Wow. So you majored in, what was it? Communications. What was the other ones?
Political science and pre-law.
And pre-law. So you know a lot. well knowledgeable.
A little bit of, here and there.
And so you're back in Watsonville. You took that sabbatical, and you're getting involved with things. And so what was that job in UC Santa Cruz? It was academic financial advisor?
Financial aid advisor.
Okay. And so you're involved with all these things. And what led you to becoming a school board member? Right? So you're involved, and all of a sudden, I think I might want to do this. Yeah. Or what was that conversation? Or what was that?
How did that look like?
How did that look?
Well, I started getting involved, right, in commissions and all that good stuff at city and county-wide. And then, this opportunity opened up. And by then, I think I had a good footing, right? I think I was connected with, as you can say, the right people. And I just feel like education was such an important thing, at least it has been for me, that it just felt like the right time to do it and the right position to take on. Because I think education is just an equalizer in so many different levels. And I felt like there was a huge need to have a Mexicana represent our community there because they hadn't had Latino representation in over a decade.
Oh, wow.
That, and then two, they needed to have a young voice. At the time when I decided to launch my campaign, I think I was 23 years old. And so I know I was going to probably have a tough campaign to run because here's, little Maria, 23-year-old. What does she know, right?
Yeah.
She's not a teacher. She's not a counselor. She doesn't have a PhD.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Which,
you know,
they're important things. Yeah.
Right. But when, when you have someone, I guess, inexperience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the things, those are the conversations that you have to have.
Yeah.
Like, especially when you're planning your platform and formulating your campaign.
Mm-hmm.
What are those answers that you're going to have to people who question your ability to do the job or your expertise and experience?
Mm-hmm. And how did you handle that? Because in high school, someone tells you straight up, I'm not going to vote for you. I don't like you, whatever. That's like, you're young. Okay, whatever, move on. But then this is a different kind of like, I don't like you. I'm not going to vote for you or support you. Mm-hmm. Two different.
Very different.
Yeah. And so how did you navigate that?
I think for me, it was focusing on who we're serving.
Mm-hmm.
And I would tell people, this is not about me. It's about doing the right thing for the right reasons and serving the community. Yes, I don't have an educational background, but I do have the experience of a student going through our schools.
Mm.
I know what worked for me. I know what didn't work for me. I know the supports that I needed when I was a student that I didn't have. And the fact that I was a product of the schools and then move on and graduated from a really good school and now coming back to serve my community says a lot about who I am and my commitment to improving the educational system.
And you were closer to being 23, you were a lot closer to knowing the needs compared to a lot of the at the time, right? Because they had probably graduated back in long time ago. So times have changed.
Yeah. And so that was my message. It was, like I know the systems. Like I went through them not too long ago. Mm-hmm. And so I have that experience to share. And one that's lacking.
Yeah.
Right, within the current board.
And you ran and you won right out of the way. And so you have the little you get sworn in at 23 years old.
I was 24, I think.
24, so 23 and then 24. Okay, at 24 years old, at the time or in the history, the youngest to ever get sworn in?
Correct.
Okay. What was that like, that first board meeting?
It was surreal, but it was amazing to experience and amazing to witness. Mm-hmm. Like in that I think that sort of kind of opened, our community to, or even maybe younger folks to sort of consider, right, running for those positions. Mm-hmm. And it sort of felt like a door kind of opened.
Yeah.
Right, for my own possibilities, but also for my own generation.
Yeah.
I remember serving on, the different commissions and always being the young person. Mm-hmm. And something just felt wrong about that. So you're representing us, but yet, you don't have the voice of our generation present to kind of inform your decisions.
Yeah. No, and what a big victory. Right?
It was, and it wasn't easy because I was running against a veteran, right? Like, former mayor, teacher, 35 years in, educational background.
Yeah.
So
it's like the David and Goliath.
it felt that way. Yeah. It really felt that way. But it was that much more that much more empowering, I feel.
How many terms did you serve as a board member?
I was there a decade.
A decade.
So 2 terms and a half.
Okay. And obviously, there was a lot of changes. I'm sure there was a lot of battles, um, and a lot of, I guess, judgment. I don't know if that ridicule from the community. I'm sure. And so we'll start with what was one of the highlights in that decade of serving. What was the fondest thing that you remember? Like, we did this.
Yeah, one of the huge ones was arts,
Mm-hmm.
getting arts back. When I came into the board, there were no arts programs in our schools. So that was a huge highlight. The other thing was shifting the narrative, shifting the expectations we had on students. Um, I feel like for so long it was, oh, el pobrecito, la pobrecito syndrome, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, no, it's okay. I was like, no, it's not okay. Set the strong expectations for students, and they're going to
Yeah.
thrive. Give them the right supports, and they're gonna go ahead and do their best.
Yeah.
Um, so that was another one, but and then the last one I would say was just how you saw as a district it gained the respect of community organizations. Before, when we were used to approach an organization to give a donation or to support a certain initiative, they wouldn't,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because of, I guess, just where we stood as a district,
Yeah.
right? They didn't see that there was much potential there. And to see that change
Mm-hmm.
was nice to watch. And the third thing I would say would be how the individual performance of students has started to
Improve.
improve significantly.
Mm-hmm.
Kids were making 2 years growth in 1 year,
That's awesome.
and that was amazing to watch.
How many superintendents did you have while you were
I
there? Two.
I had 2.
Okay. I don't remember the one before.
Dorma Baker.
Yeah. Okay. Donald Baker, and then Dr. Rodriguez. And so, kind of following up to that question, my next question is: there was a lot of ridicule, a lot of not positive things that were said towards the end of, I guess you would say, your time being there, Rodriguez's time being there. Uh, how do you? I guess what was a point where you were like, this needs to change while I'm here, right?
Can you elaborate on ridicule?
Ridicule. There was so from the outside looking in,
Mm-hmm.
there was a lot of conversations of people like, well, the board this, Maria Orozco this, or certain other individuals in the board that they didn't like the things that they were doing, decisions that were being made. At the time, for me, like, I haven't been involved in paying attention to things in the board until recently. So a lot of times, like, well, Maria made a decision or voted on a decision that I didn't agree on, and so there was a lot of talk, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you? I'm gonna say this for those that didn't agree with decisions that you made.
Mm-hmm.
What is your what do you tell those people in your time that maybe things that were made on the board that they didn't agree on? What do you tell them? Because it's easy to
Yeah.
say when you're out
Mm-hmm.
here looking
Mm-hmm.
inside, but then you're in the seat and you're making the decisions. And what do you tell them?
I think I would say that they need to make sure that they know the whole story
Mm-hmm.
and they understand the facts that inform those decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Especially when it comes around budget cuts. and laying off people.
Yeah.
Um, I think that was probably the biggest challenge for me,
Mm-hmm.
and having to make those hard decisions that were not the most popular,
Yeah.
but they had to be made,
Mm-hmm.
right? So for me is, I guess what I would say is any decision that I made as a board trustee was made to the extent possible with students in mind.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to ensure that those cuts or that decision stayed away from the classroom as much as possible.
Okay.
But there is a point where you do have to make those tough decisions,
Yeah.
and you do have to cut, and you have no other option
Mm-hmm.
but to do it.
Yeah.
So just like you have a leader that's willing to advocate for you, you need a leader that's able to make those hard decisions
Mm-hmm.
and take that community pushback to ensure that the district remains afloat.
Yeah. And like I said, like I haven't been really paying attention up until recently. And so with conversations with people in the district and community goers, it's like there everything plays a factor into it, right? Not just the school, but like the community, local government, state government, federal government. There's a lot of things that play a factor. And so now I'm starting to pay attention because it's like, okay, things are going to affect students and staff members in the long run.
Yeah.
And so paying attention, because I used to be that in a way like, oh, this person told me, oh, they don't like the superintendent because this and this and that. Okay, cool. I'll roll with that. But then now it's like, oh no, I do my own research, and I had to figure out why this decision is being made. Like,
Right.
it makes sense. And I guess for my advice for people is learn how to understand, comprehend. Because if you don't comprehend something, you're not gonna understand it. And if you don't
Right.
understand something, then you're gonna make a rash decision or say something that just doesn't, you know. So that's where I'm at too. With a lot of things, in federal government and local government and school.
Yeah.
You have to pay attention. You have to educate yourself and be knowledgeable of it.
Yeah, I mean, that goes to my point, right? It's just know the facts and really
Yeah.
take that time to understand why that decision had to be made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know?
And so 10 years, a decade in there, you saw a lot of ups and a lot of downs. You decided to leave or step down,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because was it because initially you wanted to run for city council, or was it, uh, hey, let's see what else I could do?
I think I always knew I wanted to run for council.
Mm-hmm.
I just chose to start with education
Okay.
because it was very important. It remains really important to me.
Okay.
And so when I decided to step down, it was for me a way to continue my path, right, in local government and kind of expand my knowledge base too and gain a new set of skills, while also and more importantly serving the community.
How hard was that to like leave? Because you left in the
Yeah.
middle, right?
I did.
In the middle of your
2 years in.
Yeah, 2 years in. How how was that?
It was hard, right? Because
Yeah.
it was very emotional because you're so connected with the PVUSD community, the parents, those that you serve, the staff, that it was a transition, but at the same time, you have to be honest with yourself, and you kind of have to ask yourself whether it's a time to move on.
Mm-hmm.
And I really felt like it was the time for me to step into a new role.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I just had to make that decision.
Okay. And you knew that you wanted to be in local government. What were you? Was it what you expected? Is it what you expected so far? Because it's two different things, right? I mean, the
So
campaign,
different.
the campaigning is the same because you're used to
Yeah.
campaigning, right? So you can't from district campaign to city campaign. Um, what were the differences? What are the differences and what were the challenges?
I mean, being fairly new, especially on the school board, you're running this campaign, being super optimistic, and you want to get so much done, and then you are sworn in, and then you're expected to work with other people who may not be for what you want to accomplish. And so you have to fairly quickly learn how to adapt and how to compromise and how to build momentum to support what you want to push forward. Because at the end of the day, as one person, you have no power,
Yeah.
right? You need three other votes on a 7 board member council. And so that was shocking to me at the time,
Yeah.
right? It's like, oh, I'm going to introduce this and this. And, well, you need to gain the support of your fellow board
Peers, yeah.
members to be able to move certain things forward. So that was different. um, but at the same time, it was nice to be able to learn how to navigate, those conversations and garner that support, even with, from people who you might have not thought you would ever partner
Yeah.
right with, and you do.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the part I think that was the most shocking to me. And how is it different? I don't. I wasn't. I wasn't surprised by the amount of time it would take, or the criticism that you would receive for certain decisions that you make. Because I think I've been making decisions for quite some time,
Yeah.
and it just comes with the territory. Um, uh, but the other thing I would say is ensuring that, at least for me, I had to make sure that I really had my position well defined and understood that I was solely the policymaker, and that my job was not to oversee all departments
Yeah.
within PBUSD or at the city level. Because the moment you start to do that, it gets really muddy.
Yeah. There's a lot of fine lines.
Yeah. So more than anything, I think is navigating what you can and cannot do within your position,
Yeah.
and ensuring that you're able to garner the support that you need to get what you want to accomplish accomplished.
Do you would you say with each position, do you spend more time? Because it's very time consuming, right? Catching up on things and reading and making sure. Which position do you feel you spent more time invested in? Not that you weren't invested, but like you spend more hours doing the school board or the city council.
They're very different, Eddie. So I couldn't compare both.
Okay.
I think the city takes a lot more of my time. It's a lot more time consuming, takes a lot more of my time, but to an extent is less stressful than the school board.
Okay.
The school board, it was beautiful. I mean, I love the school board. With the school board, it was maybe less time consuming because we didn't have as many events. But it was with both council and district, I always take that time to read the entire packet. And I mean, it's pretty lengthy.
Yeah.
But with school board, it was more emotional. And I mean, and why wouldn't it be? Right? You're dealing with families, their kids, their education, their needs. And so you have so many competing priorities.
Yeah.
Right? And then you have the bargaining units, and at least at the school district level, it just felt more personal, like more. They had more access to you in a way, right? And it felt like more connected that way.
Yeah.
And so it was more emotional, and it was more stressful that way, but it was also super beneficial. Like with the school board, you will pass a policy, and within a couple of months, 1 to 2 months, you could see the impact right away. And at that point, you could either pivot, right?
Yeah.
Either it's working well, okay, we're going to support it. And if it's not working well, okay, we need to figure out a way to improve it, right? So that's school board.
Yeah.
And then with city council, it's so much broader,
Yeah.
right? And the issues are so much broader. Yes, you're impacting citywide. You're still impacting probably more residents, more families. But the issues are not as personal as they were with the school board. But they are more time consuming.
Yeah. And yeah,
I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. And would you say that you don't usually see right away the outcome of the decisions you make, right? Yeah.
It takes longer.
Yeah, it's a bigger it's a
takes
bigger
longer.
bigger beast, I guess, in a way too. So each comes with its own challenges. Each comes with its own benefits, you know, of how you approach things and everything.
Correct.
So that is, and I think you have a special insight because you did the school board before. I feel like one thing always helps with another.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And so, because, you know, being from a sports background and in coaching, I encourage the kids, well, yes, you play football, but you also got to do basketball, baseball, or another sport, because those skills always translate and help each other, right? They complement each other.
Yeah.
And so what was the, I guess, skill, the thing that you take to both sides, you bring to both sides that complement each other?
I think it's not so much a skill, is it's just humanity. Is in one position or the other. It's just ensuring that you're looking out for the best for everyone to the extent possible. So I think more than the skill is that. It's just having that really community-centric mentality.
The compassion.
That compassion. And not have it be all about you. Right? It goes above beyond that. So for me, I think is that I think that's the thing that I think I've carried during the school board, and then I've carried that through this 2 years that I've been part of council.
2 years already? Wow.
Yeah, almost 2 years. Yeah.
Years. And so, in those 2 years, and like I said earlier, every council member gets a year of becoming the mayor. Right. Last year it was Vanessa Quiros, and then this year it's you, and so it rotates every year. And so, and I had asked you, and I had Vanessa, the term mayor, what does it mean? Because Watsonville is not like a huge city. It's a smaller city. It's still big but smaller. compared to like someone in like, for example, LA or New York,
Mm-hmm.
where the mayor makes decisions or signs off on things. And so is the position of mayor in Watsonville, does it hold weight? Does it carry weight? Does it mean anything?
I think it does.
And how so?
Yeah, I think in one sense is very symbolic.
Mhm.
So you can use your platform um, to expose, right, your community to what is possible.
Mhm.
So for me, that has been, um, I think, critical in ensuring that your younger folks can see someone that looks like them in this position and aspire to do that or even more, right? So that there's one component of that. The other component is, as mayor, you can choose to prioritize certain things that you want to get done.
Mm.
But with that comes really hard work.
Yeah.
So it's really a matter of how well prepared you are to take this on and to lay out your platform and your priorities for that year and ensure that you have that communication and the assistance of your staff and the city manager.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So for me, I mean, I spent last year kind of brainstorming what I wanted to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, we're into my first month, and I feel we're gaining already momentum on those priorities that I established.
That's awesome.
So I think it's all about preparation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about ensuring that you keep open communication with your staff and that you are able to work with them.
That's awesome. Okay. I like that. Like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, and I tell people, when people kind of get mad at me, like, "Oh, well, why are you saying that?" And it's like, no, it's a question. It's a legit question because, there's a there's a city manager, right, and then there's a mayor, and a lot of times the city manager is the one that signs off on things. But like in the bigger city, right, the mayor is the city manager. It's just it's blended
different.
together. Yeah, it's different. So that's why I ask. I mean,
Yeah.
I've asked even Paco Estrada when he was the mayor at the time, and I'll continue to ask. Mayors. Because it's interesting to see the different points of view, right, and
Yeah.
what it represents. And when you say it gives the opportunity for someone to see someone like them in that position. You came to the United States from Mexico at 5 years old. Fast forward many years, and at a young age, you were on the board. Fast forward many years, and now you're on the council, on city council, and a mayor. Who would have thought?
Exactly.
You at that age, you don't think like I could do this, but it is a sense of motivation, a sense of it's possible.
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah. So I see it that way, that anything's possible when you just work hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's awesome, Maria. I do got to ask though, with all this that you got going on, how does Maria Orozco relax? How does she just, how do you take time for yourself? Just
It's tough.
you have to balance that
'Cause
work
I also
life.
have 3 kiddos that I'm raising, and then my husband.
Mhm.
I think it's always making even half an hour a day to invest in what's important to you.
Yeah.
And so for me, that time is putting my kids to bed, reading them a nighttime story, telling them that I love them.
Mm-hmm.
And then with my husband, is every night we have half an hour where we just sit down and have tea and then just converse, read a book,
Mm-hmm.
watch a show,
Yeah.
after the lights are out and the kids are in bed. So I do a lot of that. And at least a 10-15 minute walk,
Mm-hmm.
just by myself with my thoughts. So that's what I can fit into my schedule at the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's reading, is watching a funny show or a good action movie, it's having tea at the table and going for a good walk.
Yeah. Because that could be hard because, like I said, like you're in the spotlight, you're involved. So you ever get like people coming up to you in the middle of the street or the groceries, like, "Hey, Maria, like I try to talk to you about like how do you just like excuse me, I'm not working right now."
But I am.
Yeah.
That's the thing, all right. When you're an elected official,
Uh-huh.
you are, right? Even when you're in the grocery store, it's like that hat can really not come off.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I've had people come up to me at Northfield Foods and just kind of, share their concerns or have a conversation with me. And I just politely ask that they walk with me as I'm picking up the tomatoes or
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's just being amicable that way because ultimately you're here to serve them.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't have access to you, then how can you do that?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's a balancing act, but um, you have to be accessible.
Yeah.
And I think one last thing that I would add, Eddie, as far as what helps me keep grounded, I think is prayer. I don't know where I will be without prayer. Yeah, and I mean, it's different for everyone, but for me, that sort of kind of keeps me grounded as well.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and that's important because, like I said, you're in the limelight. Everyone knows you. You're gonna get people from different backgrounds or different points of view that are gonna come and that agree with you, that don't agree with you. So just thinking about it kind of stresses me out because, like, oh my gosh, like, I've thought about running for city council a while back, and I've thought about the board too, because there's things that I are important to me, and so, but sometimes I do think about that. It's like you're gonna be open. You're pretty much an open book to the community.
Yeah.
And that could be stressful. Just thinking about it stresses me out. So I can only imagine, and just props to you and everyone else that just is able to navigate that. It's a tough one.
It's not an easy one.
Yeah. Hey, but someone's got to do it, right?
Someone has to do it.
Maria, I usually towards the end of the show, I ask people that come on, like, what's your advice? Give someone advice who is ever watching, whatever it may be. It could be political, it could be personal, just like, what is it that you want people to take away from this, and something that you would like people to know.
I think just staying true to yourself, holding on to those values, because in whatever you do, whether it's politically speaking or at work, sometimes those values are challenged, and you can easily give those up. And for me, it's important that I don't compromise those. Yeah. So I think staying true to yourself, holding on to those values, and taking it a step at a time.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, Maria, that's great. I'm hoping once people watch this, they'll kind of get an idea of who you are, right? 'Cause that's the whole point of this show. And so I learned a lot, learned that we went to school together for a time period at Aptos High because I was 08, you're 10. 10. So we crossed paths in the past. That's, Watsonville's a small community, it's a small world. So, Maria, thank you again for taking the time. I know you're super busy because you also have your own job.
Correct.
And so thank you again for taking this time. So everyone, thanks for checking this episode out. Stay tuned for the next one. And I'll talk to you guys. See you guys later. God bless.